Unfamiliar ceiling, fluorescent lights. Her words blinded my third eye. I know what you are when no one else is around. 3 years in dressing the same dame. 6 days introduced her to the game. 6 weeks brought her mind to its knees. 6 months steeped her in all of me. 3 years learning how to make her yearn. Her fingernail commanded my skin to hither. Her poison withered my unhinged jaw. Mine withered her winter gown. Ashes to ashes, we all fall down. Unfamiliar ground. She pieced the puzzle together. She put Humpty Dumpty back on the wall. She asked what I sensed. So I pulled her ponytail until I heard her fail. I bored a hole in the cell of her soul. I know what you call yourself when no one else is around.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Taxonomization, salutation, cognonox. Welcome back to Exofathom, the show where we dare to explore the furthest reaches of our minds. I'm your host, Mike, and as always, I'm joined with my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. How y'all doing?
Hey, happy Friday. How are you?
Oh man, I'm good. Like I said, it's been a long week, so I'm happy it's Friday.
Nice.
Ayla, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Happy Friday. I need a little Kleenex. That's like the vapors, that intro. I didn't realize it was going to be one of those late night Friday night show openings. Slightly, yeah.
Well, good. The previous version of that was corny. I felt like even that was corny, but it worked. I was okay with it. Tonight we're going to talk about names. Kind of an interesting little subject. First
That's
off,
not my name. Boom. That's not my name. Boom.
What does your name mean? Whoever wants to go first, just jump in there.
What I mean, literally or metaphorically?
I mean, either or you pick. I mean, I was thinking of it like origins. Like my name's Michael. It means like I think a gift of God or one who is like God or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah, like of
What
God
a thing
or
to live up to, right? I'm not
Right.
godlike. I'm screwed.
I mean, you got the beard, so.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think mine is Greek, and it's Nicholas, which is victorious people.
Yeah, victory of the people.
I'm going to start calling you Nicholas. I like that pronunciation. Nicholas. Or just Nico. Ooh. Okay.
Nico.
Yeah,
Well,
I like
Nico is short of. Isn't that nickname of Nicholas?
Yeah. Especially in Latin America, like all of my Latin American friends call me Nico.
Wait, I can call you Nico?
Well, I mean, nobody's stopping you.
I'm totally doing it. You're now Nico. Oh, look at how cool that is.
You can also call him like George or something.
Could, yeah.
Yeah, see, that would be weird. At least with Nico, it has like a little bit of a tie back, so it makes sense. But
are you saying he doesn't look like a George?
Not at all.
I could be.
I could never date a George. I mean, no offense to the Georges out there.
What about a Jerry?
You know, there's lots of other women that are probably pro George, so you know, or men.
Could you date a Jerry or a Kramer?
See, okay, good questions given the show title. I want to be a little more thoughtful because, again, if there is a George listening, I'm very sorry. That was knee jerk. Because it doesn't really matter, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But to your original question, just to keep us on track, the origin of my name, I guess it would be two. You know, one, my mom was reading Clan of the Cave Bears when she was creating me. And so the character there has the name. So that's like one archetype, I suppose. But what I like is also it comes from Turkey. And the Turkish translation is not moonlight, but it's like light around the moon, sort of like the halo of a moon. So I like that.
That's very
One.
cool.
Yeah,
Very, very cool. Do you feel like your name has any sort of power over you?
absolutely. I feel so cool because of my name. Like, I love my name.
Only when a parent uses the full name.
Wow.
That's when you know you're in trouble.
Even at this age, I'm 30 now. If any of my mom or dad, or even at this point, my stepmom says my full name, I'm like, oh God, what have I done?
Right.
How about you, Nick? Do you feel like your name has any sort of power over you outside of that?
It's weird because I do think about this type of stuff a lot because names and sort of linguistics is one of my, sort of like fascinations. And so I do feel like the application of a name can sort of play this role on influencing the named. So yeah, I mean, I do think that a name does have power. I don't know if power over you is the right word, but I think that names, pardon me, names are influential to a personality and maybe even a personhood, for sure. Maybe not on some sort of quantifiable level, but I think something maybe a little bit more metaphysical about it.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I guess another way to ask this question too is like, have you ever gone by any other name? Even if it's just like a nickname. Well, you go by Nick, right?
Yeah. I've had a lot of nicknames in the past, so it doesn't really bother me. Some people do get bothered by not being called the correct name, but that's never been a thing that's sort of like bugged me. My name has kind of been fluid. it's most of my life.
Trust me, I understand. I've gone by a lot of names.
Yeah, I think like Nick and Mike have, like those are type of fluid names where it's like you can do any variation of those and you'll probably be called it once in your life.
Well, I've also gone by Trevor, gone by Keith. And this is like usually I won't tell people my name, and at jobs the office environment will end up creating a name for you, and it may or may not actually be your name, and it's always funny when people start to figure out what your actual name is. But I've responded to those names as well, just like somebody was calling me Mike or Michael. I've even gone by Mark at one point. I've gone by a slew of names. What
I
about
could
you?
see you being a Mark.
Oh, you know what? Now that you say that, just didn't.
Mark with a C.
Yeah, I did have a similar experience at the coffee shop. Somebody's been calling me Mick for the past 2 months, and I just haven't corrected them.
Mick?
M-I-C-K. Yeah, it's just I'm not going to correct him at this point. It's been too long.
So. And it's always like an enjoyable moment when two people that know you by two different names come together. You start talking. Right. You're in the room like, no, Nick, he's right there. That's Nick? I swear that was Mick.
Right.
You're going to be at the shop one day and you're going to make an order and then the barista's going to get it and they're like, why'd you write Mick right in front of you? And then you're going to watch the two of them argue. They've each known you for the same amount of time and swear.
That'll be funny. Hopefully I'll be able to witness that.
And then next when you go, well, actually, my name's George.
Right. That's true.
My coffee shop name is Nick.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But
what about you? Have you ever gone by any other names?
Well, I think the question you had before that was about does a name have power over you or anything? And I like just to go back to that first question. I don't know, how did you phrase it? Do you think a name has power over you?
Do you think your name has power over you?
Oh, okay, got it. So yeah, I think just what I was going to say to that, sort of along next metaphysical lines, is that, you know, we are who we are, but there's also this like social side of us. And so I do think that whether my name influences me or not, it's like part of a coin that would also say, does others' perception of me through my name influence me or not? Kind of like artist and audience, like
Mhm.
if I create a painting and I look at it's like a square and like 4 triangles, and I'm like, okay, that's a dog. But then somebody else looks at it and they're like, that's just shapes or abstract, like the question becomes, what actually is it? Is it what the artist thought of, or is it what the audience perceives? Maybe it's both, and that's like an integrated sense of it. But that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about names and sort of that influence. I do think that it influences us in a lot of ways. Personally, I had a kind of a unique name, so you probably go through your life being a little bit like just interacting with things differently than if it was like there was 6 of you in a classroom. Like how many times have I been in a class where there was like, well, not a lot of Nicks, but definitely like more than one Michael. And I used to always think how awful to share a name with another person. And then I met another Ayla and I was like, this is weird. But I was like way older when that happened.
You're touching on some interesting psychological notions. We're going to get into things like sound symbology and how actually having a unique name can affect your life. There are some cases where in the short term it does bad. So, for example, in those classes, there have been studies that sort of found that if you have a unique name, you end up scoring worse than somebody with a common name, because this gets into like implied egotism and how you can see yourself in other people with the same name, but if you're alone, then it can actually be a more challenging experience, especially if your name is unique and easily made fun of. Then you start to have negative self-esteem, and you get this invert of the implied egotism where instead of kind of gravitating things that you associate towards, you push them away. And it becomes kind of strange. And that ends up even starting out with just pronouncing the name.
Wow.
That sound symbology. The most basic example is something like bang. I say the word bang, we all know what it is, but bang is just a symbol for the actual noise. Just like written names are a symbol for the actual noises that are made. But yeah, no. So, second question though, have you ever gone by any other name besides Ayla?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like a nickname or like an alias?
Either or. I mean, a nickname would be considered an alias.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I've definitely relished going by Honey Badger before. I believe that was in our little group of friends. I loved that nickname. This is when I was trying to surf big waves and I was very aggressive about it. And like a total, yeah, like I was like being a really jockey about it. But I got this really fun nickname called the Honey Badger, and it stuck for a while, and it was probably one of my favorites. So I like that one.
There's definitely one I know you don't like that I used to make fun of you for. That was always hilarious. I won't repeat it. We want to be the nickname that shall not be named.
Well, you could message me, and then I'll let you know if it's worth repeating. I appreciate the thoughtfulness, but
it's a really good ice cream flavor.
Oh God. Okay.
Well, that's a little bit different, though.
That is a little bit different.
But still a nickname, is it not?
I guess. It's more of a descriptor, though, right? I guess a name is a descriptor, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're getting into these strange linguistic waters.
Yeah. No, but you're right. And to those of you listening, because we're being cryptic about it, let's just say that I was associated with a negative ice cream color, and I resented it and its implications. And yeah, I can see like if I was younger and instead of it being an ice cream color, it was something else, and I was like feeling insecure about it, then yeah, I'd probably be a lot more hurt by that.
Well, thanks for clearing all that up, Ayla. That sounded like everything just made sense after that.
Yeah,
What
that
is
was,
it? Oh
didn't
God.
add to any clarity, but let's just press on.
All right.
So
Apologies.
what's great is that this actually that actually goes on to my next question: is that has any of the nicknames or other names that you've gone by, aliases, made you feel different? Like you were maybe a different person or a variant on your current self.
Oh yeah, like so when Michael Scott is prison Mike, you know, yeah, or date Mike, yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've had a nickname that was like attributive to an action, so might have been a little bit more difficult for me to make those correlations. Yeah, I don't know. Most of them have just been variations of my name. So
there was for me it was the biggest one I had was in middle school. So before wanting to get into computer science, I was really into forensic science. Like this was like maybe a year or two before CSI took off, and I got grounded one night when I was like 6 or 7, and my mom made me only watch the Discovery Channel. And late at night on the Discovery Channel, they have a lot of Forensic Files episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I became enamored by forensic science. And in middle school, my nickname was Forensics.
I love
And
it.
I can remember feeling distinctly different with being called Forensics than I did being called Michael or Mike.
Yeah, I've always wanted to make a cool nickname stick, but they can't. You really just can't do anything about it. It's got to be bequeathed upon you.
Yeah, my teacher gave me the nickname. He signed my yearbook, Forensics. And then the name just stuck for all of middle school.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's hard to because you can't just be like go up to your friend group. You're like, I want to be called. I don't know, what do you call it? Something cool, like Eagle Fang or something. Everybody just look at you and be like, "Shut up, man!"
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they'll probably pick an even worse name for you.
Eagle Butt.
Yeah.
No, your name is that's the guy that calls himself Eagle Fang.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sad. But I do think that one of you hit on something, a good distinction, and I don't know if this is true, but I thought it, and I just want to highlight it. So, forensics, that was a nickname based on something that sort of like set you apart, and an action or a hobby, an interest, something you're good at. It's an empowering nickname. Whereas a nickname based on your name, it doesn't have like an adjective associated with it. So it's sort of like
it's more of a shorthand.
Yeah. Well, like, when like if people are jockeying for jobs, you have like a lateral transition versus like an upward transition. A name for name nickname is a lateral nicknaming. Whereas if it's a nickname based on like something cool, then it's an upgrade. Would you say? I don't know. I mean,
no, I'm just trying to understand the corporate lingo you just threw at me. So the lateral movement is a nickname because it's equivalent. But if someone grants you a title, like I got granted forensics by, which makes it even better, is by an authority figure, like a teacher.
Oh.
Then that's like a promotion in like a social hierarchical sense, like you've transcended something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What up, Mike?
It's Mike.
Hey,
we're just talking about names. So, and yeah, the orbs are familiar. That's Ayla.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's actually a picture of the like the galaxy we're in, or the universe, or something. It's some sort of weird thing, science, like space related. Sorry, I'm not primed to speak on that, so I have no idea what it's called, but it's something true. Yeah, and just going back to the nicknames, I think you're right. Honey Badger was related to my surfiness, and it was a very empowering nickname to have. So,
but it was also tongue in cheek because you were so small and you thought you were so tough.
What? Okay, was it tongue in cheek to everybody but me?
Yeah. I mean, Mike was around. Big Mike was around for that, so yeah, he would know. But yeah, I mean, well, yeah. So what other nicknames that are not like originated from my name?
But
Nah,
real quick though,
Pickle.
I
I was called Pickle at the old Starbucks.
Why were you Pickle?
I don't know.
I think since it rhymes with Nick and
Nickel,
pickle or
yeah.
something. Maybe.
No,
I hope. Gosh.
man, that sounds like there's a story there that
There really isn't. Jordan used to work at Mike knows. See, he's in on the lore.
On the lore.
Yeah, he's in on the old school lore. Jordan used to make nicknames for everybody. So she was kind of cool like that because she would give you a nickname. And they were always very obscure. Yeah.
Interesting enough.
Sense.
I'll go for it.
I was just going to say, I get the sense that I need to reach out to this Jordan and say, I will build you a website as a professional namer or nickname bestower. Because, yeah, that's a good nickname.
That's like a shaman level thing to do, though, to give people names. So, like in the Zulu culture, you're not actually like born with a name. As you mature and based on the things you do, you're given a name, which is rather interesting because that's the thing we're sort of talking about with these nicknames, right?
Yeah, we are
bestowed upon you by elders or by people that carry that sort of like shaman level class.
That's really a really cool concept, Mike. I never really thought about it that way because you're right. Like, I mean, the role of a shaman and the role of naming, like, it'd be interesting to look at that across cultures. And is that what we're going to do tonight? Do you have like more examples of naming ceremonies or?
No, I took more of a Western approach, and like we'll get more into Jungian psychology sort of things. You know me, I'm a whore for that sort of stuff. But the cross-culture analysis of how naming works and the naming practices would be interesting because we've already done an episode on initiation ceremonies, initiation in general, and taking a new name or being given a name is definitely part of like the end process after you've stepped through your trials and everything. After you've stepped out that space, the name that's given to you when you're done.
Yeah, and like not to bastardize it or anything, but like I'm just thinking about social media and how like the bequeathing of a nickname or a name, it's like something that you will use to introduce yourself within your society. So a parallel example for today, you could argue that certain like marketing people are like digital shamans bestowing like personalities onto people or names. Maybe that's totally not right. I was just thinking out loud.
You're thinking closer to brands and you're not too far off. What you brand something becomes very important, especially within the aspect of taming something. When you tame
sigil magic.
Yes, because when you name something in a certain essence, you're taming it. You're bringing it closer to you. You're also putting bounds on what it is and what it isn't.
Did you just say digital magic, Nick?
No, sigil
magic. Oh, right. We were talking about sigils when GOT, like, you know, before they crashed and burned. I remember thinking, oh, wow, God. You know, this is like the pumpkin episode. We did an episode a while ago on just pumpkins, and you would be like, what is that about? But it's a really good episode. Like this one, I'm feeling is going to be like names are really in, you know, like mythology and lore and a lot of stuff. It's interesting.
The funny thing is that we will go down the rabbit hole of reading some Testament of Solomon, and during our pumpkin episode, we read that Testament of Solomon as well about envy. The passage that I'm going to read tonight actually happens right before the passage on envy, and the names become a very important thing. But yeah, no, you're right. It's this thing that slowly peels open more and more. You dive deeper and deeper down. The gist of the pumpkin episode is that basically your brain and your head is like a pumpkin, and the symbology is very important. And then if that doesn't interest you, you can go running down.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the biblical Genesis, Adam and God name the animal. Well, God brings the animals to Adam and has him name the animals.
That's a
Yeah.
fun job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and it reflects that sort of mastery, right? Or we're talking about this sort of mastery that the speaking of or uttering of a name sort of bequeaths you. So that's symbolic of sort of man's mastery over the natural world.
And real quick, getting back to trying to tie this back to the question, is these names ever made you feel different? Ayla, you said that honey badger name did make you feel more empowered.
Yeah, yeah. And then I thought I could surf like a 14, 16-foot wave, which I could not. And I think that was like the death of the honey badger. I think honey badger died that day. To be honest.
Rip honey badger.
I know.
Nick
Yeah.
Well,
has
sometimes sometimes you need to destroy a name too, right? In order,
Yeah.
because the way I'm thinking of this is sort of like avatars or skins. Like you are you, your soul is you. Inside you, there is a thing that is deeper than just Mike. Mike is the label, but it's just sort of like a skin you're wearing. And the thing deeper inside of you is sort of Mike is just one facet of that, and it can be changed, So I definitely see the names, as Ayla said, with the honey badger thing, like you're bringing that avatar of courage and not giving a crap. We did this with our heroes, for forever. We would give them names of note, and that would sort of propel the legends of them, so yeah, it's kind of cool how we can wear them like armor.
Yep. And you're right, in our Western culture, our names they're sort of like attributes of us. They're not exactly us. They're the label that we wear, like kind of like like the avatar, the skin, the clothes, the way that we present ourselves to the world, or at least the very first thing that how we present ourselves. But they're not chosen by us. They can be as you get older, right? You can change your name and stuff, which is kind of cool. But that sort of notion that it is the avatar, there's a very dangerous part where it can actually influence your personality and your look, which is actually interesting. There's a bunch of psychological studies on this sort of thing, where what you're like, you'll find that certain people with the same name will have the same personality or similar personalities.
What?
Yeah, and some people will say it's constrained within cultures. I did a little bit more digging. You remember how I was telling you about sound symbology?
Oh yeah.
It turns out that based off of certain sounds within the name, if somebody knows nothing about the thing, right? I present to you a shape, and then I give you a list of names and tell you to name that shape. It turns out based off of the sounds that we make in our head, we have a tendency to pick one name over the other. So that implies that when someone just hears your name or sees your name, they will have a certain idea about you. I think they're called, the sounds are like sonnets. They're like nasally type sounds that come with like N's and not L's. L's are more like vocal stops. M's, N's, certain things like that. Nasally sounds like M, L, and N. And then on the other side, you have these voiceless stops, short sounds that are formed by blocking airflow in the vocal tract, such as T, K, and P. There's a study that actually grouped these sounds with certain expectations of personalities or personality types, where one might be, I believe it was the voiceless stops that were expected to be more extroverted versus the other ones that were supposed to be a little bit, not more introverted, but a little bit more, not gregarious. Gregarious can be extroverted. I forget what, but they had a certain set of different personality traits. So if you're a kid, you really like this formless shape, and just based off the name, people have a certain expectation of you. They'll start to implicitly give off that expectation to you, thus slowly forming your personality into something similar
Yeah,
across.
that's why you give your child a strong name, right? You don't want to give your child a weak name. And we for some reason it is subjective, but we have a kind of an understanding about what a weak and a strong name is, which is interesting to me because I don't know where that distinction lies.
I think it might come from maybe trends at the time, like what's more popular in any given year. Like that becomes a bit of a stronger name versus ones that are more unique become a quote unquote weaker name.
Yeah, but I think it also has to do with like the sounds that you're making too, right? There's probably something in relation to those, N's and R's and then hard like K's and that maybe for some reason gives us a feeling of a strong name.
Yeah, it's more like of a sharp versus like a soft name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something more consonants versus more vowels or something like that.
Yeah. It'd be like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to disparage people's names, so I'm trying to think of like
Georges.
Yeah, but we have the meme of Chad, right? Like Chad is the meme, the meme of like the super alpha male Chad,
Yeah,
which
if
is
I was
funny
a Chad named after like the 2000s, I'd be so pissed. I'd be like, you know what you did? You know what you did?
Well, it's
You're
funny
irresponsible.
because before that meme, Chad was not a strong name. But it became a strong name because of the meme. I think, anyways. Yeah.
Well, we gave it.
If you met a Chad,
no, I met a Chad before the meme, and he was a dorky dude, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a Chad."
Wait, no, Chad's gone through two because the first Chad wasn't that the like the voting joke in How I Met Your Mother?
Was it Hanging Chad?
The Hanging Chad, yeah. I think that was like the first popularism of Chad, and then it became like, am I wrong? But like, is a new Chad like a well, I don't know. Wait, what do you guys think of when you think of
Chad? The meme is Chad. Yeah, the meme is a strong masculine man with a big jaw, and it's the Wojak meme, but it's like Chad, the Chad Jack meme, I guess. But he's got a big beard, he's got a strong like angular jaw, and he's got like a really grizzled face. But yeah, it's interesting the way these memes and culture, like you were saying, Mike, culture can influence the way we also see memes or names. Sorry.
Yeah, and memes seem like a good vehicle to change the way that we perceive names.
Yeah, look at Karen.
I feel so bad for Karens around the world. Like, what an innocent name that just, unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond one's control, just...
That name was never innocent. No, I'm just kidding. I've never met a Karen.
It just stuck. It's something about it just felt right, and the population of the world's like, yeah, we'll accept that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll tell you, though, I knew like at least three Karens, and at least two of them were very delightful people. The third one was okay too. I mean, as much as
and I met a really nerdy looking Chad, so there you go.
Well, maybe he like grew up to become a Chad,
Maybe.
So real quick though, there like the sonorants and like that nasally sound. That think of a name like Mona or Owen. They're associated with high. I had to dig up the research. I apologize. They're associated with high emotionality, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Whereas names with voiceless stop, phonemes is the part of phonemes. Think about like phonics, like the way you say stuff, such as like Katie or Curtis, that t sound, were associated with high extroversion, which is really interesting to think about because you get like based off of names of things alone, working through that implied egotism. You get like an expectation of what that thing should be. So like going back, like if you're a child and an adult is talking to you, they're going to press implicit meanings of what they expect of you, implicit expectations of you, of based off the name. They may not even realize they're doing it because it could all be subconscious. That ends up forming personalities around the name. So it becomes really important what you name your children or what names you go by.
Yeah,
right?
it's actually really true. It's almost as if the name becomes its own archetype because so many people have used it. Again, we get into the fifth dimensional or, collective unconsciousness discussion where it's like these names constantly used over time have created some sort of like psychic archetype that sort of influences people, almost like a zodiac, if you will, which is kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah, you're starting to touch upon the social unconscious too, or what, at least within outside of Jungian psychology, they call it the social consciousness or unconscious, which is kind of what this study was building off the back of, which is pretty intriguing as a whole. Like that unconscious can enforce somebody to become a certain way without them even realizing it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting too is, like, as you were talking, I was thinking about that early implicit learning that comes with sounds, like the K sounds or like the vowel sounds or something. And like thinking about like the first words that you learn, there's like maybe yes, no, mom, dad, like all those simple first words are going to be the ones that get the most repetitions the earliest. And I wonder if some of that plays into it. But also, I remember, so I had like a really hard time distinguishing sounds as a kid. So when I spoke, I wasn't able to like enunciate things in the right way. And it wasn't because I couldn't, it was literally I could not hear the difference between certain sounds. And I remember repeating and drilling stuff day after day after day. And I was like, it's the same thing. Oh, and like it was just weird that like one day you just turn a light on and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, that's the difference you're referring to? And so like having that delayed experience, I think kind of is interesting, what, thinking about sound and associations. And because I think you're a little bit more aware of like how it feels to not be able to say certain sounds. And that's going to be different than other people, right? Like if you can just speak R's, for example, and it's totally fine, you don't think about it. But as somebody who couldn't say R words until very, very late,
I don't know what the big deal about that is, to be honest. You just speak with the British accent for the rest of your life. You'll sound cool. Just be non-rhotic.
How do they say R's?
Well, they don't. They say like water.
Water. Mm-hmm. But no, but like, how would they say red?
Yeah, I guess red. Yeah, but it's more of a WE. But it's they still have the hard R for that, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I used to I went to speech therapy in school. Probably just the beginning of my dyslexia. But I used to talk like this. My R's never really like connected, and I had to really truck. I can't even try to reproduce it.
Yeah, Wedge is my big memory.
And it's is talk like a New Yorker or something like that. That was always the joke. But having to go to speech therapy, you have to think about it. You do have to understand what sounds you're trying to make.
Yeah, and I remember being really bad at spelling. Like no matter how hard I would study, even like first grade, second grade, I could not spell for a damn. And it started to come together. Like I remember water, I always spelt it WADER. And the idea of adding a T was like ridiculous. And they kept saying it's a T. And I'm like, it's a D. That's what I hear and how I say it. And slowly like you expand the nuance and suddenly you can like spell it in alignment with how other people are spelling it. Which is just, it's just
the
interesting.
Correct way to spell it. Just don't be such a jerk about it. This is
All
my
words
truth.
are made up.
WADER is my truth. Okay,
But
don't
it
make me
was
use the
though.
T.
But no,
Well,
but that's what I'm saying is I literally could not hear it until I could. And
Yeah.
so it's just funny to be like
So
against
here,
the grain on that. It's I don't know, it's a weird experience to remember.
well, here's the problem then. Like I would say water. Like, can I get some water? But I
You
would
do sound like
spell
a
it
New Yorker.
WADA. Give me some water.
Yeah.
So if,
WADA.
if
Oh, yeah,
there
yeah.
wasn't some like education trying to like force me to say it the right way and then spell it the right way,
Yeah.
in theory, everybody would spell and say everything different and would be screwed as far as communication goes. And especially when it comes to like somebody's name, that can be damn, like if you misspell somebody's name, the amount of time I take in like work emails and work Slack messages, being like, hey, human, I spend more time on the human part than I do the rest of the message. Because if I spell that name wrong, I feel awful.
Yeah. No, I know. I think I misspelled a name a couple months ago and the person corrected me and I just felt just like so small. I felt so small. I'm like, oh, how did I do that? Because people care.
Luckily, like I've never, well, not never. I used to care a lot more when I was younger, but as I got older and I'm more into philosophy, I've thought of names as just, or my own name as just a label. Like it's not really the thing that I am. Even though this research has kind of made me reconsider that point of view. But I've never cared enough to correct somebody on properly spelling my name.
Yeah, I just make sure I spell out my name when I respond. Like I've been called so many different things and I just put my name at the bottom. No need to call attention to it. Just put it right there. Nudge it a little close. Keep it present.
The subtle hint.
Yeah, but also too, like my name is one of those that if a lot, like before it was more popular, people would see it and have literally no clue how to pronounce it, and I always have to like let them know because there are lots of ways you can pronounce it depending on like where you're from. So, which is interesting too because it's like I just assumed everybody would get my name wrong the first time they said it out loud, and that was just like what I became accustomed to.
I always assumed that somebody would spell my name wrong. They always did. They
Your
always
name's
spelled
hard,
Michael
though.
E-A-L, and I'm like, that's not.
Michael.
Screw it.
Michael.
Like, yeah, I guess they're getting closer to like Hebrew now or something.
I mean, I probably butchered it, like your name, a bunch of times. A's and E's are just like, what order do they go in? Because if they're like inversions of the same letter, if you think about it. So
you always called me like Patient Zero or something like that. So I don't know where you're getting in this spelling my name from.
That's right. No. We called you Outbreak is, I believe, your name, which is not like cool given today's standards. But to those listening, while Nick is in the bathroom, we're taking a little hiatus moment here. No, he was at university. And so when we would hang out, he would always be bringing like a cold or a germ. So we'd always get sick after we'd see him. So I started to call him Outbreak.
Hey, you can thank me. I strengthened your immune system.
You sure did, buddy. I should schedule
exposing it to new germs that it's never
6 months since I've seen you. You should come by again. But that is probably one of the best nicknames I have bestowed upon another person. I thought that
I
was
liked Outbreak.
Really
Outbreak worked. It was fine by me. That was good funny. That was good. So we're kind of in agreement that these names can kind of either change your personality in some way or kind of morph it, depending on with respect to the culture that we're in. You know, it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, now, do you think your name can influence the way you look? Do you feel like you look like a Nick? And Ayla, do you think you look like an Ayla?
Huh. I guess that gets into all sorts of questions about like what a thing looks like or a human. But I would say I feel like an Ayla because I think Ayla's kind of like it was an anomaly of a name. So I mean like, and a lot of other Aylas have curly hair. So checkbox. I'll look like me. No, I'm just kidding. That one thing. No, but I mean like, yeah, I feel like well, I don't know though, because then sometimes it's a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know if you look like what? The
Well,
funny
see,
thing
I
is,
would say that I do, but then it's like if you were to ask me what the defining characteristics would be to meet that criteria, that's where I'm like struggling because I don't really know.
so if we took all the faces of Ayla, like we gathered all the Aylas into a room, and we let you guys just hang out. We could take pictures of your face, figure out the commonalities between all your faces, and say that that is the face of Ayla.
Did
And
somebody do
all,
that?
yeah, this is how facial recognition works. And based off of every person, um, there's a certain amount of error where you deviate from what the average, mathematically speaking, average Ayla face is. So the most common, bring in all the commonalities, lay all the faces over each other, figure out what the most common things are, and create that face. Every Ayla around it then is a certain degree of error off of that face because it looks different. Not error may be the wrong word, but we call it difference. And within a certain, there's going to be a maximum, of course. But in the case of that maximum, there is like a neighborhood of Aylas where it's like that, where you stand very different than a Jan or a Pam or a Karen. They have their own data sets and their own localized faces.
Wait, so question, has somebody actually done this and is there a website?
Oh,
Because I'd be
see?
interested.
No, I don't think the research has gone in that direction where they've used facial recognition to kind of compare all the face. Well, they have, but not in like not in the
in a
sense that
fun
we're
way.
talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
not in a fun
Not in
way.
a fun way, just in a dystopian way.
Yeah. What about? That's why at the beginning of the show I asked you if Nick looks like a Nick or if he looks like a George, or he looks like something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time conceptualizing faces in my mind anyway, so I don't know what a Nick would look like. I've met a few. They've been white guys, so I mean that's about
Step
as deep
one?
as I can go.
Question
Yeah.
mark? Well, there's a study where they showed people random faces and they gave them 4 choices.
Okay.
And it turns out that 38% of the time they picked the name that the person is.
It's not
Which is,
insignificant.
yeah, and it's higher than
higher
the
than the
random
average.
guess,
What's
which is
the
25%.
thank you. 25, 38.
Yeah. So 38 is much more. Again, like if you're randomly choosing, then it's just whatever one over how many choices you have.
Did they run that against like people just choosing the option C every time?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So
Percentage?
like if you just chose option C every time, you would have a 25% chance.
Interesting. Okay.
And so what it turns out is that there might be this bidirectional link between your name and your face. So you end up in, they call it the Dorian Gray effect, where your actions end up and your actions and your personality trait end up changing the way you look in the future, because as you do more things, you get more set in who you are and you feel like I should look like this. So if we add that with the name thing and personalities, where you get this social construction of who you are from an early youth, then you have the ideas of the things you should do and how people that do the things that do that thing look like. You start to build yourself into looking like the thing that society told you to look like, to do the things that you think your name does. So example is rock climbers look like X. We think of a rock climber is probably influenced by like advertising. So then rock climbers look like that. I gotta go buy some rock climbing gear and I'll start to look like that. And then that goes even farther. Like, well, maybe my hair should be this certain way. Maybe I should take care of my hands in a certain way. And so you end up getting to a pool of people that all sort of look the same.
Yeah.
Now you take that, but with respect to a name instead of rock climbing.
Yeah, this would go back to this idea that perhaps names already have some sort of intrinsic archetype that is being emulated by the holder of the name.
Yeah.
You know, so
So-
yeah, I mean, yeah.
So like I have friends that tell me that I don't look like a Michael.
Mhm.
One of my Middle Eastern friends was like, "Dude, you look like my Uncle Osama."
That's okay. My Middle Eastern grandfather went by David, so it's all right. You know, they often pick westernized names. We can tell them that next time.
But the notion of that there is a certain way our face looks, and we have this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy from when we're youths to look a certain way is really intriguing based off of our name alone.
Yeah, but it's also incredibly subjective, because I would ask that person, compared to what? What does a Mike look like? You know, like, what do you have in mind? Is it just because that I have olive skin and a beard? Is that why you're calling me Middle Eastern? Like,
oh yeah, but we get back to that again. I guess more of like the facial recognition thing of if you took all the mics, regardless of skin color and regardless of facial hair, and you put them all together, how far am I off of all those features thrown together and made into an average?
Well, I think that Mike might be a tough one, because there are probably a lot of South Asian Mikes.
Yeah, and then what exactly that threshold is.
Right. There's probably Mikes all over the world, like on every continent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so it would be a sample case of probably every race.
But it's
Even
interesting.
then, I don't know that the percentage of error would be between 38% and 25% in that case. I feel like it would be a much smaller increase in similarities. And at that point, I don't know if it's like you can just isolate that one factor as being the reason.
Well, you would have to build a threshold. In this in the psychological study, they only gave people a list of 4 names to pick from.
Oh, right.
Right. Where this study would be different in the sense that we're working from a known name with a set of faces. And then you can start to branch off and saying that if you have a beard, there's an implied error rate of this much. If you don't have a beard, there's an implied error rate of this much. If you have hair, if you have long hair longer than shoulder, or give it a number, 6 inches or like a foot or whatever, what metrics ever you want to use, then the error rate is this much. And then you can start to get into what's called classification. So then you can start to say that the class of long-haired mics look like this, class of short-haired mics look like that.
But so the argument is that we're doing this subconsciously in our heads.
Correct.
The computer, we're just using the computer to sort of like capture and isolate and quantify
our implicit social biases of what it means to be a mic.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because like as you were talking, you had said something in there that got me thinking about like, the experience of having the 4 names and like a picture, like which one. So I started thinking when you said beard, I was like, okay, well, it's like a Tom. Do you guys think a Tom would have a beard?
No.
And like you haven't said, I don't think a Tom would have a beard. What do you think, Mike?
I know a Tom, and a Tom has a beard.
And a Tom has a beard. Okay. Well, what about like a George? Does a George have a beard?
Everybody has a beard.
I get very biased by known people. So if I just like, it would be better if we would either one use our own names. For example, like when you think of
Hunter has
Ayla,
a beard.
Yeah, but does Ayla have long hair? Do you think every Ayla has long hair? Or do you think when you think of Ayla, do you think of somebody with long hair is the proper question? Without trying to introduce any biases.
I see the issue with the beard. Yeah, but okay. So
but then you get biased upon yourself, right? But this is where that implied egoism works, where it's like or egotism works, where we gradually want to associate, if we have high self-esteem, or healthy, or high health self-esteem. We want to associate things that we think of ourselves. We want to associate with those things that we think of is similar to ourselves.
This is
Hmm.
all really very ego driven. I'm just kind of above all of that, so can't.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're there fucking like
Wow.
transiting.
Wow,
I'm-
Nico. Damn.
the air is thin here on my high horse. I'm feeling faint.
Can you
no, I'm kidding.
when you look down, do you see Mount Everest on that mountain of yours?
You all look like ants.
So this is a thing called "We Look Like Our Names." It's something that was published in the APA. The abstract just goes, there's a comparative studies analysis paper. It goes, the current set of studies suggests that the association between faces and social perceptions could be a two-way street. Whereas earlier research focused on the effect of facial appearance on social perception, we focus on the effect of social perception on facial appearance, and demonstrate that actual face name matches do occur. The face name match implies that people, quote unquote, live up to their given name in their physical identity. The possibility that our name can influence our look, even to a small extent, is intriguing, suggesting the important role of social structuring in general and naming in particular in the complex interaction between the self and society. We are subject to social structuring from the minute we are born, not only by our gender, ethnicity, and social economic status, but by the simple choice that others make in giving us our name.
So how do we know this isn't a chicken or egg scenario?
It becomes a chicken and egg scenario. They talk about
okay.
that in the paper, where like that's where the two-way street comes in,
Oh, okay.
because the chicken and egg is a two-way street, right?
Right.
The bidirectional link, and it requires, it kind of requires a bit more research, but the idea becomes very intriguing. That, for example, I look the way I look because I think in my mind that society has informed me that this is how Mike is supposed to look.
Yeah, but you could also just say this is how I look because this is how I feel I should look, and my name is Mike.
Correct.
Yeah. It's interesting because like part of me definitely feels like there is something intrinsic about names and that sort of qualia that I don't know what you would even call it, but avatar or sort of archetype or whatever definitely applies. But it does feel like a feedback loop. It almost feels like the two are happening simultaneously. Like you are aiming towards Mike-ness, but you are also Mike-ness.
Yeah.
And like, for example, too, there again, getting back to the Dorian Gray effect. Just combining the words. Oscar Wilde play, which is great. Oscar Wilde was a great playwright. 16th century? No, later.
Oscar Wilde?
Oh, yeah.
Early 20th century, I think. Oscar Wilde did a lot of his plays, I think.
I just remember the importance of being earnest, and it's just being so. It's one of the only like play scripts that I've actually read. So
I believe Oscar Wilde has been reincarnated, by the way. If anybody is a follower of American Horror Story, they have the season Apocalypse, and the character who is like not the second coming, but he's like the bad,
the Antichrist.
Yes, that's who he is. The actor Cody something or other. Look him up. He looks exactly like Oscar Wilde.
He might be related.
He was
maybe.
Oscar Wilde was born in 1854. Is off by 300 years. Just a little bit. Just a little off. That's it. That's it.
A blink in the cosmic timeline.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, from Nick's high horse over there.
yeah, pretty much.
But no, this notion of like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that might have a stronger thing, like where society tells me what Mike does, both good and bad, and I do Mike things.
You also create Mike. Yeah.
Yes. And as I do Mike things, I create Mike, which then informs me how I should look like in my outer appearance. in order to create that internal mic. So,
Which then
for
feeds back
example,
into the way society perceives you. Yeah.
yes.
Mm.
So, for example, one of my favorite, it happens in Knights of the Old Republic as well, but in Fable, as you do more criminal deeds, you look more
Yeah.
criminal.
Yes.
If you do more good deeds, you look more angelic, to the point of getting a halo. If you do the most bad things, you get little horns. But that's a very simple way of how we actually might work as far as forming the way that we perceive ourselves and the way that we choose to show ourselves.
Works like that in RDR2 as well.
Yeah. And then you have people who can totally ruin names, right? So who wants to name their kid Adolf?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. That's a no-go right
Well,
there.
there is a
actually it's a very popular name in Africa. Don't look it up.
Yeah, there is a politician by the name of Adolf Hitler.
Yes, there is.
And we just got demonetized.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm sorry.
I don't like it. I don't like it. There's like 2 names I never say. That's one of them.
And the other one is Voldemort.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
But no,
funny.
So I want to calm down a bit. I want to move away from this sort of notion
Halos
of
don't calm down.
There's no chill. There's not one
Honey
Ayla has
Badger.
one chill.
Has arisen.
Of names kind of informing our personality, maybe even our social look. And of course, all of the way that we interact with society, right? Because I mean, it's kind of it's already known that names on resumes, for example, can affect if you get an interview or not. And this is, if you really want to pin it down, it's just due to what's known as, just restating the same thing as implied egotism. So whoever's reading your resume is going to associate him or herself closer to what sounds most familiar. And it's just sort of the way that we work implicitly as human beings. If you want to escape it, then you have to be aware of it. You have to name it, oddly enough. You get back in this. If you don't know you're doing it, then you can't ever fix the problem of doing it.
Right.
But,
yeah. I mean, it's a good thing that what's his name? Fucking A19, A Ash Archangel 19 is a Musk, because he'll never get a job with that name.
Right. Well, he could just, I have a feeling he would just write Ash.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Right.
No, but it might be a bit of a lonely experience. Well, it would be if you went to public school. But if he, as long as the kid stays in private school, it'll be fine.
Right.
Well, no, it could probably even be worse, or probably be harsher. But
yeah.
Well, this kid's gonna have troubles in the short term, maybe have success in the long term, because there's also evidence to show that people with unusual names tend to do well at unusual jobs, but have a short-term disadvantage in social settings. But I didn't really agree with that essay, but that goes beyond the point of this. But there's some evidence that shows that that's the case.
Yeah.
Because they're used to being in that unusual space. In my mind, that kind of makes sense. But I want to ask you, why do you think we name things? What's the purpose?
I think it's just part of communication. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to categorize things in order to point at them and say, like, I want this, or I need that, pass me this. Or to be able to maybe reference things, past and future. I saw a Nick, I will see a Nick. If I don't have a name for a Nick, I guess I would have to go off of like our relation,
So to identify something.
Everything is a name, so it doesn't. We wouldn't have a language if we didn't name things. So every character of languge is a name,
is a symbol.
I feel like Mike's leading us into a gotcha moment. I'm like hesitant to answer more.
I've been watching, I've been all on this. I've been all on the trial scene and LawTube recently. So this would be the point where you would go objection leading, and I was like, I gotta figure out my fucking question in a new way. But if we go down that rabbit hole, then I'm gonna be like, when you ask me something that I've already answered in a convoluted way, I'm gonna be like, objection, asked and answered. You got to go moving on, and then you have to figure out what to do with yourself.
That's hilarious. Oh god.
So in one sense, there's this article from like a branding perspective on why we name things, and what Ayla you were describing is to identify something. Nick, what you were identifying, what you're calling out or identifying is we name things to symbolize them, just like letters, right? Or just words in general. We name words to symbolize a description of things. This gets into like in philosophy, I think it's like descriptivist, I think might be the word notion. For example, you can say, why am I blanking out on his first name? You can say like, you can say Nietzsche. And then I can say that describes a human being that was born in this place at this time. That describes a person that put out these certain set of books. This describes this and that. But it symbolizes something. Just like the word apple symbolizes a fruit that grows on a tree that has a certain shape with certain properties, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Gwyneth Paltrow's kid. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, too, a part of that was that I was describing something.
Sorry, right? Hold on. I'm just thinking back to Mike's algorithm magic, and so like the algorithms inputting different types of apples for a common
yeah, and it's just a picture of apple Paltrow.
And the computer's like 10% error chance.
All of these, yeah, and then outlier, it's like way fucking over here somewhere.
Right, and then you get like some like crab apple or something, and then it's like that is not an apple because so and so pushed the algorithm over just enough.
Actually, that would be an intriguing, like, fun science experiment if you took like you could probably do it with like TerraFlow because you don't have to write the algorithm yourself. But take like any out of the box thing and you just start feeding it different objects and just see what it comes up with. Might be a little fun.
Especially too, because then you could compare the differences in the percent of error with those horrible off circumstances with the other stuff.
Yeah, I do want to remove the notion of error real quick.
Well, not error, but like anomaly figuring or quantifying. Yeah, I guess that's a good word.
Deviation.
Difference is the key word. Only because error within computer science or within machine learning means a very certain thing.
Apologies, mea culpa. I've offended the tech gods.
Well, no, like I'm probably like picking hairs because then somebody that knows would be like, well, difference is just a form of error.
Oh, let them be mad. You want comments, people.
Error, and we'll all
let's get into this linguistic nihilism. I'm all for it.
Yeah,
let's just argue our way into oblivion.
Honestly, though, if we got famous, I would love that to be the comment threads of just people like just redefining and interjecting,
deconstructing everything.
Oh my god! Because think about it. Like, it would be such a ripe area for creatives to pop in and be like, "Oh, that would be a good way to like solve this problem," or "I never thought about it that way." And be like a hub for ideas or something.
Yeah, that's what we are. We're
just
like
the
spaceship
internet.
For ideas. Right from me, still from you, my algorithm. So I could be like, oh, look, that's actually a pretty decent entrepreneurial idea. We're famous and we have money. I'm going to take that and use it.
Yeah.
You poor commenter, you have no resources and I have resources. Therefore, that's my idea now. Thank you. Thanks for coming out, kid. Sorry, came past my own egoism. So yeah, no, we're talking about describing names and like the things that we use names for. We also use names to refer to things, right? To refer to, for example, a human or a culture or whatever. We use names to simplify things. This is probably most, in my mind, I jump to like, again, algorithms. I can either show you the whole algorithm or I can say, This is the bubble sort. This is the binary search algorithm. So we name it to simplify it and understand it. We name things to organize. This is also known as classification. So if you know taxonomy of living creatures, you like sort birds that have certain characteristics into this group, and then other birds with certain characteristics into the other group. That makes
Phylum.
sense.
Genus and phylum. Yeah.
Yep. You're the zoology guy. I swear, I don't know how you remember as much about animals as you do, because
Well, that's like the Asperger's part of me, you know. That's
It's so
probably
good.
why.
like I'll start like talking about animals. Like, yeah, you know that animal. We have them this, and this. I'm like, yeah, man. Like as soon as you say it, it's out of my head. I'm just like, yep,
yeah.
whatever
There
you
is
said.
It's not in my head unless it's said. So it's just kind of like a
It
or
just
unless
clicks
it's
in.
like convenient. Yeah, like there's nothing worse than playing Scrabble with him and thinking you're winning, and all of a sudden he busts out with like Swiftlet, and you're like, dude,
yeah.
that's a thing. But damn, like I don't have this whole catalog of random animal names like to just throw on the Scrabble
Guys,
board.
this isn't really useful information. Don't be jealous. Like,
Hey, look, we like trivia, right?
yeah,
As far as
trivia
useless
is fine,
information
for
goes,
sure, for
we
sure.
appreciate. We're connoisseurs of useless information.
But
Hear,
funny enough, I
hear.
get my ass kicked at every trivia night anyway, so it's not even the right type of trivia.
Yeah. Well, no, you have to be like you can't look directly at the Nico
Right.
in order to extract data from his consciousness. You can't
Oh,
be like,
he's Schrodinger's Nico. There's an observer
Yeah,
effect.
there's an uncertainty principle to my line of thinking. That's for
Schrodinger's
sure.
Nico.
At one
You know,
moment he's on his high horse, and the next
Yep.
moment he's groveling on the ground.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We got the best
Yeah.
nickname for Nick. It's Schrodinger's Neko, because Neko in Japanese means cat, and it sounds like Nico, which is like Nicholas. So
That's a very
Schrodinger's
long
Neko.
nickname. You can't even say it right, so I don't think it's gonna stick.
It's gonna take me a time, okay? I have a speech impediment.
Call him-
Another nickname that doesn't stick.
You call him Schnecko.
Yes.
And
That
from
is-
this day on
Probably will
forth,
stick,
I
unfortunately,
bestow
'cause I don't
upon
like
you
it.
the title of Schnecko.
Oh, he's had some great nicknames
I'll
for
wear it.
me, but I think Schnecko's probably.
As we were talking about these names, I actually had this thought of job titles. Like that's like what you go out. There's this whole initiation process called the
Yeah.
interview. You go out and you try out for it. You fucking put on your best clothes. Sometimes I in tech world you usually don't. You try to look just casual.
Put on your best
But-
hoodie.
Yeah, you try to like blend into the background or something, and you say the things, you do the song and dance. And within tech, the interview is usually far more intense than the actual job. And then you come out of the initiation process with a title, and that's your title. That's like your name in a weird. It's
And
your.
then you meet strangers and you say, "Hey, what is your name?" "Oh, I have this name." What name do you have?" "Oh, you only
Yeah.
have that name?"
Yeah, and you build social hierarchies. And
Yeah, yeah. I have one of the good names. Sorry.
Yeah, like so it's an
Yeah.
interesting world, but it's the same thing though that we're talking about. That same sort of naming process, and in the same way, it's like the Zulu side rather than like the Western side of things, where you're just given a name, right? Wouldn't it be great if like I graduated with a computer science degree, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're a programmer. Go nuts. Get a job anywhere that needs a programmer. You don't need to interview." But still, there's
They do
this
that with
sort
some
of-
jobs. Not programming, but
If
some
it
other
isn't
jobs.
programming, there might be a gun at the back of your head, and that becomes a big problem.
I'm so
Then a
lost.
whole other issue. Like doctors, I guess, would be in the same way.
An
right?
interview.
But once you hit medical school, they're much more like you made it into medical school. We're
Yeah.
trying to help you grab the job.
yeah,
We're
once you
done
get
with
into your
the
residency, you're not technically done, but you are a doctor.
Yeah, especially in residencies, that's far past. Like I know people that were trying to get into medical school where like the competition was vicious. Like I'm talking, like there's a library that holds a bunch of papers, and that's the only place where you could actually read these papers. You can't download them or anything. And there's students that would tear them out of the books so that other students in the same class
What is this, Game of Thrones?
That's
Yeah.
so cutthroat.
Like,
medical
Oh
school
my
is
God.
Game
all
of Thrones.
the maesters wearing their chains, chaining up books. No, you can't make a PDF out of this. It's the sacred text. Like,
Freaking maesters.
like, come on, man.
That's exactly what it's like. Though.
It's well, then the cure for all diseases are in that fucking library, and they're just not giving it to us.
Like at a certain point, we had to get guards, like not like guards armed with guns, but guards armed with tasers to make sure that students didn't try to run out with books. It got intense.
This is what
And
hoarding
anybody-
knowledge does.
Yeah, I know, right? It gets really-
Alexandria called. They want their burning back.
All right, sorry. We went down this long tangent. I got to get back to names so I can read the thing, and then we can get into a whole. We're not going to make it on time. I hope you know that. There's no way we're going to finish this conversation in 15 minutes.
We could do a two-parter.
We'll see. We'll see. I'd actually want to get to the reading, and then we'll see where the rabbit hole goes into. So we got to like simplifying stuff, and then there's organization, which I know we did get here, which is like taxonomy, it's classification, that sort of stuff. And then there's taming. Now taming is actually pretty interesting, where it's sort of like alcoholism. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? The first step is saying the thing and putting a name on it, and then you can start to work through it.
A problem needs to be identified before it's known to be a problem.
Exactly. In order to do that is to give it a name. But the same thing works within like within branding. And then on the occult side of things, you can call it branding a demon. But once you've learned the name of the demon, then you have power over it because you know its name. Right? And that goes actually the same thing with like summoning angels. So if you had
Just makes me think of Sympathy for the Devil. It's a great song.
the Rolling Stones.
The Rolling Stones. Pleased to meet you. Won't you guess my name?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's actually one of my favorites. Rolling Stones has some great songs.
Of course.
But I'm going to get now to sort of the core of this episode and where I kind of got to draw inspiration from. Like all the psychology stuff is, the name psychology stuff is interesting in the feedback loops. I definitely probably warranted, but also enjoyed the pushback. Because some of it makes me wonder too if, because we're saying at this point that names are so powerful that they can make you into the person that you are, and they're not even, your name's not even given to you, or you don't even get to pick your name, it's given to you. And at the point where you get to pick your name, you have like 18 years of existence on this earth, filled with the most impactful experiences that you have.
Well, and that's just a personal name. Then we have to talk about social descriptors. I mean, social descriptors become their own names. And, you know, like I'm sure many people are aware, if you're living in 2022, social descriptors are used quite often on the internet. And yeah, I would say that has an impact.
So to me, it's like, I think of handles as a whole different identity because I come from the old internet where you can like make your own, like, I'm Cool Kid 91 and I'm going to call you all the racial slurs. Doesn't mean I actually mean it.
Right.
But we're on the internet. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to say something that I think is edgy and funny as a child. But those different names might still have power, and that's where it gets interesting. If that's what you mean by social descriptors.
Yeah. Or, you know, like how, not to get into deep politics or anything, like how somebody in who's political would view the other side, right? So whichever side you fall on, you look at the other side and you say, well, they're the they're the enemy. They're the ones that are destroying. They're the other.
Yeah, the left and the right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's the other, right? And so the other really is the ultimate name, and that's why I brought up sympathy for the devil, because he's the adversary. So the other actually becomes the first name that we kind of know, other than self. You know, like it's kind of interesting that, you know, the other was when we started conceptualizing names and thinking, you know, bringing things to it, we had to name the things that were outside of ourselves.
Yeah, it's in set theory it would be the thing where, or the set that you and I don't have any common elements.
Mm-hmm.
Where like in the old tribal sense, you and your group feel like it's best to go, I apologize, to go hunt up on the mountain because you love eating mountain goats. And I say, no, I think it's best to go hunt in the plains because I think bison is the best to eat.
Right.
And then we argue over those differences. And then I am in the plains group and you're in the mountains group.
Right.
But we're still of the same tribe, but we are still somehow other. And that's the social qualifier or the social descriptor, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting and it also makes sense because our lenses are with our own selves. So you would first identify the things that are other than you. And that, you know, branches out into tribalism and politics and all of the crazy shit that we deal with now in the modern world.
No, it makes sense. I think it's a very silly thing within the modern lens, only because like in reality, we're all of the same tribe. We're just of different sub-tribes or different ideas. But the notion of the other is so primal and so strong that we end up treating our fellow human as if they were actually something other.
Yeah.
And it's that power in that name of the idea, or it's the power in the name of other. It's the symbol of other that is the double-edged sword of damning and good. Because in some cases, you need the notion of other, right? You need the notion of the enemy in order to go to war.
Adversarial energy. That's
yes.
You know, because then if you don't have that, you have the garden path, right? And all of our mythology has told us that there can only be heroicism with great struggle and adversity. And if you don't have the adversary, then you have no hero.
Yes. Yeah. And that struggle, getting back to this taming notion of why we name things, there's, at least within the best sense, without annihilation, there is this notion of taming. And within the Testament of Solomon, which is the sort of the foundation of this episode, as I stated earlier, he tames demons and gets him to do his bidding, binds them. And this is also the core of the episode of the pumpkins, which is a great episode that Ayla talked about earlier that I recommend people listen to. But I'm going to read again from the Testament of Solomon and get into this interesting notion of something that doesn't have a name and the troubles that come with the inability to be able to name the adversary. Cool?
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Let's go. There came 7 spirits, females bound and woven together, fair in appearance and comely. And I, Solomon, seeing them, questioned them and said, Who are ye? But they, with one accord, said with one voice, We are of the 33 elements of the cosmic ruler of the darkness. And the first said, I am deception. The second, I am strife. The third, I am battle. The fourth, I am jealousy. The fifth, I am power. The sixth, I am error. The seventh, I am the worst of all, and our stars are in heaven. 7 stars humble in sheen, and all together. And we are called, as it were, goddesses. We change our places altogether, and together we live, sometimes in Lydia, sometimes in Olympus, sometimes in a great mountain. So I, Solomon, questioned them one by one, beginning with the first and going down to the seventh. The first said, I am deception. I deceive and weave snares here and there. I whet and excite heresies. But I have an angel who frustrates me. I'm going to mispronounce these so hard.
Don't start conjuring demons. Pronounce it.
I know, right? Oh. Lemichalel. The AL sound is hard for me because I don't speak Hebrew. Likewise, also the second said, I am strife, strife of strifes. I bring timbers, stones, hangers, my weapons on the spot. But I have an angel who frustrates me. Baruch Echel. Likewise, also the third said, I am called battle, and I cause the well-behaved to scatter and fall foul one of the other. And why do I say so much? I have an angel that frustrates me. Marmareth. Likewise also the fourth said, I cause men to forget sobriety and moderation. I part them and split them in parties. For strife follows me hand in hand. I rend the husband from the sharer of his bed, and children from parents, and brothers from sisters. But why tell so much to my despite? I have an angel that frustrates me, the great Balhithal. I got that one wrong. Probably got that one wrong. Balthal? Never mind.
I'm not seeing any dimensional tears, so I think you're good.
Yeah, we're going to keep going. If you see one, let me know. And if an angel kicks off my head, I promise I'll stand on it and still speak.
There you go.
Likewise, also the fifth said, I am power. By power I raise up tyrants and tear down kings. To all rebels I furnish power. I have an angel that frustrates me. Astaroth. Likewise, also the sixth said, I am error, O King Solomon, and I will make thee err as I have made thee to err. When I cause thee to slay thine own brother, I will lead you into error, so as to pry into graves, and I will teach them that dig, and I will lead errant souls away from all piety, and many other evil traits are mine. But I have an angel that frustrates me, Uriel. Now I gotta look around because I actually know the pronunciation of that word. All right, no, we're good. Likewise, also the seventh said, I am the worst, and I make thee worse off than thou wast, because I will impose the bonds of Artemis, but the locust will set me free. For by means thereof is it fated that thou shalt achieve my desire. For if one were wise, he would not turn his step toward me. So I, Solomon, having heard and wondered, sealed them with my ring. And since they were so considerable, I bade them dig the foundations of the temple of God. For their length of it was 250 cubits. And I bade them be industrious. And with one murmur of joint protest, they began to perform the task and enjoyed. But I, Solomon, glorified the Lord and bade another demon come before me. So the thing that I read was basically of the seven sisters, the Pleiades. and it has a lot of like a lot of heavy inspiration in Greek mythology, of course. Within Greek mythology, the Pleiades are the seven daughters of Atlas. And when Atlas was a Titan, and the Titans rose up to rebel against Zeus and the gods. But the Titans lost, and Atlas was forced to hold the heavens up. And his daughters were so sad that they committed suicide. Zeus, feeling their sadness and kind of moved by their emotion and their action, gave them the stars, which is the constellation Pleiades, which is within the the Pleiades, which is in the most known constellation of Taurus. But here they're kind of casted off as demons. They're not exactly the seven deadly sins. They are slightly different. But I want to call into focus the seventh, the worst of all, because she actually foreshadows the end of the story. So if you've never read the Testament of Solomon or have no idea what I'm talking about, or who his brother is and why he killed him, within the book of Kings in the Bible, Solomon slays his brother over a dispute over a kingdom. And it was according to error that he did this. But the seventh, that's a different thing, but the seventh one, Solomon ends up falling in love with a pagan and crushing 5 grasshoppers, or the locusts. And some say that this was the embodiment of Eros, which is Cupid, that made him do this, that disobeyed his God. God actually abandoned Solomon completely. Like, doesn't tell him that he's leaving or doesn't, like, mess with him. If you know anything like the book of Job or something like that, God likes to torment whoever he finds faithful. But not Solomon. He just quietly leaves and abandons him. And so Solomon ends up making a temple of idols, ends up doing the same service the demons did him to various false idols, one of them being Moloch. And in one theory, it's that this seventh demon was set free and embodied the pagan woman that made him fall in love. And sort of the moral of the story is that no matter how faithful you are, you're always subjected to demons, right? Especially temptations of the flesh or greed. Solomon builds a temple of gold, so he's always looking for gold. So like an Achilles' heels of his character is that he wants gold. But if you can't name the demon, notice like all the other demons that are within the seven sisters are named and have an angel that frustrates them.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a certain power over these demons as long as you can name them. But it's the seventh one that you have no idea about. And Solomon is a little bit arrogant because he doesn't ask any questions. He just binds them. And even though he has the ring of Archangel Michael, he still assumes that even though he doesn't know the name, that this ring is going to work and could bind them. So this kind of gets into the notion of, like, again, naming your own problems. From a Jungian sense, I see it as within the whole story, within Solomon kind of flipping and end up becoming subjected to the demons that he once binded as like anima possession. And I see the seventh demon as the anima. If you don't know what it looks like and if you would allow it to possess you. Because you think you can have it under control, but then you become possessed by it, and then it ends up becoming your folly. Because that seventh demon ends up foreshadowing the end of the book. Foreshadowing the end of the Testament of Solomon. Simply, if you can't name your problems, you can't start to sort them out.
Also, that there's always a disaster that you will not be able to see.
Even if you meet it, though?
Yeah, I don't think that. I think that there's, obviously all of this is metaphor. So, the seven sisters, the seven demons, whatever you want to call them, they're just externalities of the inner thing, right? It's the externalities of what the human condition. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I think the seventh one also kind of represents the uncertainty uh, eh, of anything, of the ability to not know what's around the next corner, the potentiality for disaster.
That makes sense.
It's
So
the
if all
thing you
was meant,
can't name. It's like
yeah, that does make sense. It's actually maybe spot on. Because I like to be like I'm somebody that tries to play out all worst case scenarios,
mhm.
but it's always that like getting back to that boxing idea. You can plan everything out, but it's always that one shot that you don't plan on that
Yeah,
catches you.
yeah.
You know?
And it's also a good way of telling the Solomon story too, because Solomon is an all-powerful king binding these demons that he's able to name, but the downfall ends up being the thing that he can't identify, the one thing he doesn't see coming.
Yeah, the
You
one
know?
thing that he can't name. And as he's supposed to be like sort of like an all wise knowing type
Mhm.
guy. Like he still errors. He still accidentally kills his brother on error. Demons still can get the best of him. Like all human, like those shadow aspects are self within the Jungian sense, right? They can still
Mhm.
get the best of us. But yeah, no, it's the one thing that he doesn't even ask questions of, or
Yeah.
anything like that kicks him.
Hubris,
Yeah.
folly. Yeah.
There is like a theme of like the root sort of sin is greed, um, with lust being the greed of flesh sort of thing. He
Mhm.
has at the end he has all these wives. He's conquered a bunch of things. He's set perfect, but he betrays his own god to get one more wife. And this wife ends up being a follower of Molark, ends up being like a false idol, and then his god punishes him pretty swiftly, which is a interesting idea to think about, and how
Old
it's like you
Old Testament God does not fuck around, man.
no, no,
He's not. He is not rainbows and butterflies. That's for sure.
but kind of like pulling it back into the Jungian thing. What do you think is the temple of God?
I mean, the heart. What was the Charlie Chaplin? Oh no, I mean the Bible verse. The kingdom of heaven is within
Within you?
every living soul or whatever. Yeah, so I think the temple of the God is the inner self, the soul, the thing that is wearing Mike-ness.
The ideal self. I like to
Mm-hmm.
think of it as that, right?
Yeah.
The so like I'm very much inspired by Jung, and then the vehicle that took me to Jung was, of course, Jordan Peterson. He does the whole clean your room thing. So in a very physical sense, your room is sort of the temple of God. If like you always feel like my body is a temple, like
Mm-hmm.
I can't put anything into it, so then your living space is an extension of said temple.
Right.
So the clean your room thing is sort of like preparing the temple of God. So it's an extension from the ideal self into the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really intriguing too. And that notion of like when you dive into your shadow, if you're a male, so we're talking from a very male point of view here, because King Solomon's a male character, that uh, um, that seventh sister is like sort of like the anima, the thing that lies all the way at the back of your shadow, and if you can integrate it in, then you reach the temple of God. That's I feel like the reason why the seven sisters are responsible for building the most important part of the temple, the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of arrogance that Solomon has doesn't give the anima the respect to at least figure out what she is or who she is or the name that she has. So the foundations are corrupted. And if your foundations are corrupted, it doesn't matter what you build on top of it, it's still going to be corrupted.
Well, I
And
mean, who would have thought building a foundation out of deception would be a terrible idea?
I know, right? And you can flip the story on its head. So when I say anima, then a Jungian thinks it's because I'm a guy. For women in the female sense, it's the opposite. So it's the contrasexual relationship that you have with yourself. If you're a female, then it's the male parts of you. If you're male, it's the female parts of you. If you're an attack helicopter, then it's the tank parts of you,
Mhm.
etc., etc., etc. You can always build the opposite of you within engendering and encoding if you've done your due diligence
That's a
to
lot of D's.
encode. I know, right? To encode these things properly within your own identity, you can figure out what the contrasexual thing is that you're talking about.
Well, almost by your very existence, you create your opposite, right?
Yeah, yeah, extreme opposite. So, yeah, what you think about it? How do you feel about the thing you cannot name?
She's ingesting.
I
You
am.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
The thing you cannot name. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting stuff. I think what is it? Trinity said it best. It's the question that drives us. So I think in a lot of respects, having something that you can't name is important because it leaves a gap for which to aspire if life is a pursuit of knowing.
one of it's also a great driver of fear though. One of I actually watched so last night the host of Strawberries and Coffee, co-host of Screen Time Continuum, Mr. Dijon came over and we hung out. It was Cinco de Mayo. Um, was last night Cinco de Mayo? We're still on the timeline.
I think so.
Yeah, we're fine. Um, and we watched a movie called It, The Terror from Outer Space. A movie that came out in like the 50s. End up inspiring Alien and Aliens. Very claustrophobic movie about a Martian creature that gets on a spaceship, and as the ship's flying from Mars to Earth, terrorizes the crew. And just the idea that you couldn't name it, you have no idea what it is. There is a little bit of fear and terror that is that unknown. Like actually is the embodiment of the unknown. And within the Testament of Solomon, the seventh sister embodies that sort of fear of the unknown because she has strong enough will to not even tell who she is. She's so like there's that unknown brings in more terror, and it's much easier to glance over it and keep going than it is to try to address it.
It's also the final barrier between us and God. And so I think that that's the most important sort of relational aspect that it has with mortals is that eliminating that uncertainty principle would bring us closer to omniscience, which if you're thinking in sort of like a mythological, biblical sense, would be the sort of like the impetus for a decline in a society. If you talk about things like the Tower of Babel or Atlantis, or anytime humans have dared to knock on God's door, he always knocks back. So I think that that's kind of a representation of that uncertainty thing, that thing that will forever keep humanity from being sort of like the all-knowing beings and orators of the tale. We're kind of the characters in the tale. We're not the authors of the tale. And so, yeah, I think that a lot of mythology has always had that, and we've talked about this, the veil, that barrier between human and God.
Yeah, I feel like every time we try to reach through the veil, God just puts a foot to our face.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, can you blame him for doing that? I couldn't. Stay on your side, goddamn.
Yeah, I know, right? If you're like the guy behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz, you don't want the people fucking raising up the curtain.
Right.
But this notion of naming things, though, always gets us a little bit closer to the other side of the veil. Always works to just get us, because you can even think about it too. This might be my final idea on this. Is so you have angels that frustrate demons. And the word frustration is actually really important because the state that the human feels when the two are battling over each other. But if you put it in like a Aristotelian sense, where you have um, you have like a like the side of cowardice, and then you have the side of being stupidly heroic or courageous, where like you're willing to run into any dragon's mouth. I forget the word for brash. You know the
Selfless.
word self, well, not selfless in the sense that you're doing it for others, but you're still doing it for glory. Like you're like you don't actually assess the situation right. But there's a middle ground that there's a golden mean, like a golden ratio sense. Like there's a middle point that you're trying, a balance that you're trying to reach. And if you hit the middle, then you can balance cowardice and courage, where you know where to run, where you're like, I can't win this, so we have to like make a retreat. I have to retreat. We have to figure out a way out of here. But you know when you can run in and like, yeah, the odds are kind of stacked against me, but if I do this, this, and this, I'll make it out.
Yeah.
And then you run in there and you do it.
Yeah.
And it's that understanding of that
the
balance.
duality.
Yeah, the duality that sits in between angels and demons. But if you can't name anything, if you're in a completely unknown situation, you have no idea where that balance lies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the duality of both things. It becomes that feedback loop again. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I mean, we could probably talk a lot more about all of this stuff.
The Seven Sisters are really interesting because they are goddesses. They are the children of Atlas.
They're pagan.
So yeah, no, within the Christianization, they end up becoming demons, right?
Well, it's interesting. I was going to mention to you because the frustrating angels are actually demons. Astaroth is a demon. Marmaroth is a demon. So I'm thinking that the languages are a little bit antiquated here. So these are the names. Power is named Astaroth. Battle is Marmaroth. And then strife is Baruka Ta'el or something like that. So frustrating angels actually, so all demons are angels anyways.
That's true.
And you have frustrating means to invigorate, to enliven. So I think the translation is that these angels, the frustrating angel is the name of the demon itself.
You think that is a bigger deception going on?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, why wouldn't a demon deceive? You know.
True.
But yeah, and it always is around names, how demons deceive. But yeah, but it goes back to that feedback loop thing, right? You have the sort of like the good and the bad, the dualities encompassing one idea.
No, you're right. There's also one variable we need to play for. That's my shitty pronunciation of things. But I do find it really interesting that demons would say that like they would lie to King Solomon, even as he holds. It makes sense as the ring of Archangel Michael. Michael would probably piss off a demon to make the demon want to lie even more and try to bring in other demons in.
Demons always lie, at least in the mythology, anyways.
Yeah. That's true. But they're supposed to be special about the binding, where they have to tell the truth, but I guess not. Like,
yeah, I think also, yeah, right, yeah, probably not. But the binding also is the exercise of the hubris, right? That leads to the fall. Because you're deciding to bind, and then of course you're deciding to bind that thing that is unknown and unnamed as well, which ends in the calamity, right?
Yeah, and I apologize to any Hebrew-speaking group of our audience. I do not speak Hebrew, but I tried my best.
Well, cool. Yeah, I mean,
as long as I don't speak Hebrew. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to summon any angels or demons.
That's right.
So I figure that's the best course of action.
Well, and what's cool about Hebrew too is Hebrew is music. It's a musical language. Every word is a musical note.
Ooh, so we're going to get into the mathematics of things.
Well, then you get into the Kabbalah and sort of the sort of Kabbalistic Judaism a little bit of Proto-Judaism.
And a little bit of the precursor to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Tokenism.
Yeah. Tolkien took
Probably
from,
stole it. Yeah.
yeah.
But I was just reading the other day the intro to the Silmarillion.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they talk about music as kind of like the world being birthed through music, which was kind of a cool concept.
Mm-hmm. One in Hebrew makes
Lots
it
of names.
even cooler because all of the names of angels and demons are like musical notes. They are spoken musically. That's why, you know, like you have the Baruch Atah Elohim, that prayer. It's a song, and you have
Are
to
the
sing it.
demons discordant?
Maybe.
Oh,
Maybe.
I learned like the leather thing. I learned it actually, and I forgot.
The binding.
Yeah, I learned it and I forgot it. I gotta go relearn it.
Oh,
Apologize.
well, when you're about to give like a talk or go on stage, it's red leather, yellow leather. I mean, that's what I was taught.
Not what we're talking about, but okay.
No?
Different
I'm so anytime anything comes up with like
You just
like-
check out at biblical.
no, well, it's not that I check out, it's that I have 0 anchor points, so it's just like
That's
you
what,
don't
that's
need
what
one
I'm
to talk
laughing
about
at.
metaphor.
around it.
Well, that's what I'm laughing at. I respect it, like, but I get that you have 0 anchor points. So when I say like the leather thing, you have no idea of Abrahamic religions. And
Well, yeah, and earlier you
Why-
were talking about being
why should you?
tongue-tied over names. It made sense.
But no, I think a future episode would be a lot of fun to break down, like a demonology and a angelology, like
Ooh.
break down all the angel names, break down all the demon names, and explore those aspects without
There's a lot of
summoning them. I'm gonna sit in a circle. With all.
Yeah.
Just hold a sign up, be like, we're going to talk about this one next. So it's not all Beetlejuicy. And then on screen time, you guys could do a review of Constantine. Does it live up?
Oh, within Aber, like if I'm gonna scribe the names, it's far worse than me just incanting the names.
Okay,
Yeah,
same.
you don't want to write them down. That's
See,
sigil.
this is
That's
why I
sigil
get all
magic.
quiet. I don't know. I can't. I'm like worried
No,
of even like
fair. Like,
listening to
Ayla,
stuff.
Ayla doesn't want to get hexed.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Great questions. They're just you're asking the proper questions for that. You don't know. It's not your culture, and you shouldn't have any you shouldn't feel any pressure to learn these things.
Yeah, especially in a lot of those descriptions, some of the words like pagan, I'm like I remember very well.
I
Anyway,
said
I'm not gonna get
pagan.
into that. You said pagan. Oh yeah. It's like it's just interesting to learn about it. I do need to learn more, but there's just so much
pagan
stuff
is
to read.
just it's just
Non-Christian.
non-Christian, like native Celtic,
yeah.
native
Non-Abrahamic.
Yeah, anything non-Abrahamic is described as pagan, but it's from the viewpoint of Abrahamic religions, it just means not our origin, it's the other origin.
Is and correct me if I'm wrong, but with Abrahamic religions, is there an aspect of travel, or is that wrong?
What do you
I
mean?
always get this sense of like nomad. I don't know why I have that associated. That could be totally wrong.
I don't know.
but-
It's religions that were born from Abraham. I don't know if Abraham traveled a lot.
Oh boy,
Well, they
I
were
need
all
to
in the
learn
Middle
so
East,
much.
so yes, there were probably a lot of nomadic tribes and stuff in the Middle East, Sumer and all of that stuff. And then you have obviously in the Torah, you have Moses and the Jews leaving Israel or Egypt and wandering the desert for 40 years.
Maybe that's why I think of those, because I also think it'd be cool to do an episode just on like nomadic culture, nomadic life. Like the Romani, certain Plains Indians, like what it would be like to live a life where the goal isn't to have like a specific route, but that you're like sort of just one with the flow of things and you travel with the seasons, I imagine. And that like your lore would be built around that kind of movement as well. What that would be like.
Follow the buffaloes. I've learned it.
Yeah. Follow the sources. I know in like different parts of Africa, you can have areas that are total desert, and then depending on what time of year, it's like lush, and so people would migrate around that too. So,
nomadic cultures are interesting, but remember, my core indigenous root was always Aztec. So if we're moving somewhere, it's because we're going to take it over.
No,
And
no.
then
And we're
sacrifice
ripping
everybody
hearts
that's
out.
there.
Yeah.
Which
There's no
actually,
nomadicism or peace here. There's empire building and
Yeah.
turning of slaves. That's
We're
all we
Fire
do.
Nation over here. We're not
Yeah.
the air,
Fire
we're not the
Nation.
air nomads.
Like, oh, you're so cute. You want to follow the animals and hunt them and have peace. That's adorable. When
Yeah,
just
yeah.
your heart
Say
says
that
you-
to my howitzer.
oh gosh.
Oh, I'm going to hell. but no, that's all I got.
Sweet.
Names.
Name.
Quite
Name
important.
Nomo.
Do you, any of y'all have any finishing ideas or?
No, it's very intriguing. Another topic that I feel like could probably be discussed for hours and hours and hours, but
If we
you did
did, like-
a good job crystallizing
We
some
did,
important
if we-
stuff.
Yeah, if we did the cross cultural episode, it would definitely come out like last a long time. Just
Yeah.
make sure animal possession, expanding the contrasexual relationships with the self, naming is taming. Once you can name the demons, you can work on it. The notion of the first step, mission of the problem. Yeah, no, that's all I got.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
So.
Or
Who is
Beetlejuice.
Rumpelstiltskin?
Rumpelstiltskin. That was the whole
Rumpelstiltskin.
Oh,
Snakeskin?
gosh. Wait,
spinning
say it right.
spinning
You're
hay
freaking out.
into golden thread. Rimpelstampleston.
That's gonna be some like elite level of torture. You just sit there and mispronounce a name over and over.
Stample,
work.
nipple.
That would drive me insane. Oh my god. Wait, keep going. I think it still hurts.
All right.
Oh.
Well, that's all we got for tonight. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope that you have a wonderful evening or whenever you're listening to this. Very special thank you to Mike for bringing this episode to life for us and bringing another great conversation to the Exofathom table.
His name's
So-
Forensics. Get it
Yeah,
right.
thanks Forensics. We appreciate you, man.
Any night, any day, don't go serial killing because I'll find you.
There you go. That's right. Absolutely. We hope
Love
that you enjoyed
forensics
this episode too. Let us know what your what would you name yourself if you could pick your own nickname. Let us know in the comments down below. What would your nickname be? And come back. We may call you that. You never know. But thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate all of you out there. Please give us a thumbs up and perhaps a subscription to our YouTube page. We're also on Rumble, Odyssey, and Verbal. So if you want to check us out there, you can as well, all at Exofathom. Please go check out the network of podcasts that we're on. You can check that out at the Facebook page, Thinkering Talks, where we have this show that's on Friday nights. We also have This Married Moment with Keelan and Bobby, which is Saturday at 10 a.m. On Sunday and Wednesday, we have Screen Time Continuum with me, Mike, and Keelan, sometimes Deshaun. That is 8:30 Wednesday and Sunday every week at Screen Time Continuum. So go check that out. Deshaun the Mustard, friend of the podcast. He's got his Twitch channel called Strawberries and Coffee. And he's on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 p.m. So go check him out on Twitch, Strawberries and Coffee. And Keelan's got a podcast too. It's called If Numbers Could Talk on Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Please go check him out as well on YouTube and Facebook. And he's also on Spotify, If Numbers Could Talk. But that's it from us, Cognonauts. Until next time, stay out there and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Yep.
Yup.
Yup.
Trying out different ones.